So I noticed that people do have these distortions within them, and of course I think there's a point at which people go beyond simply holding a distortion within themselves, which they could at some point transmute. They go beyond simply feeling upset about what's going on in their world to being vindictive about it.
I understood the question. But many times people ask what defines their evolution, what defines their progress. Sorry. So what does define your progress? It's what you are, because you may acquire so many pieces of knowledge. You may acquire so many even experiences, perhaps. You may deal with different entities and even worlds. But what makes you a spiritually evolved being is something else, is your actual being, is your actual way of how you view the reality, how you perceive it from within, how you deal with it. What is this reality? And your understanding of the world, the level of your humility, the level of your intelligence, which is defined by that humility. People consider themselves intelligent if they know a lot of information. They consider themselves spiritually intelligent if they offer some logical explanation. But what truly defines us on a spiritual level is a level of selflessness, humility, and knowledge as an emanation. So if people say that they are spiritually evolved, but they're vindictive, they are driven by negative emotions, they are driven by comparison, by competition, they don't perceive themselves as the flow. They don't realize their emanation. They don't hold on to their essence, but they look into other people's gardens. They want what is on other people's plates. They want to have other people's destinies. These are not spiritually evolved beings. These are traumatized, weak beings who play spirituality, who play with the matter, with their own and other people's emotions. So black magic is or holds at its core negative energy. Negative energy is negative emotion, which is anger. And anger splits into jealousy, comparison, envy, competition. So vindictiveness, rage, desire for vengeance. But where does it come from? It comes from their own hurt sense of self. It comes from ignorance. Ignorance means limited perception, limited perspective. The scope of awareness is limited. If they were awakened and expanded beings, they would understand that they're not individual beings. They're part of the collective, the universal. Higher consciousness is a higher class term. It's a collective, it's universal. It doesn't hold the seed of individuality. And so true spirituality is about the expansion and the realization of that higher dimension, which is on the collective and beyond. But when people haven't realized those dimensions of self, have not expanded through those experiences, have not dissolved their strong, traumatized, full of crust, you may say, sense of self, that sense of self will still be driving their lives. What's the purpose of those experiences then, of those pieces of knowledge? If their emotional dimension is not refined, not transformed, they cannot see beyond that dimension of emotions and disturbed mental and emotional constraints. So these beings will be then emanating that, will be attracting similar type of people. Because if they employ this kind of emotions, if they employ this kind of mental paradigms, they will be attracting similar people. Most of the people are looking for solutions, looking for healing, looking for vengeance, looking for something on an emotional level. And so spirituality of the current age is their occult spirituality. We may say demonic spirituality. Demonic means it employs emotions, it employs the lower nature, the lower human nature, or the paradigm of the lower human nature. No one is perfect. But if we cultivate simplicity, humility, and we discover our natural true flow of life, we will recognize all these elements within ourselves as corruption. We will identify it as such, and we will not go along with it. When people have no awareness, or in other words, live in ignorance, they cannot identify corruption. They live through that corruption, they flow through that corruption, they emanate that corruption, and their spirituality is of a corrupt nature. But since this is the collective, the majority represents that exists, so what's the purpose of trying to grieve about it or trying to change it? If the majority emanates that predominates, all you can do is to deal with your own self, to deal with your own frequency, to deal with your own corruption on whatever level you are or wherever you are. That's all I can say. So the bodily healing becomes also a very kind of acute subject. But again, because when we don't understand the subtle dimension, we can't understand the origins of disease, the origin of imbalance, which is the imbalance of consciousness, the disease of consciousness. If we don't see the disease of consciousness, we can't understand the reasons of actual ailments or illnesses of the body. The body is the fruit. If a tree starts rotting from the root, eventually the fruit will be rotted too. So that's the whole principle. And why we live in ignorance is because we've just simply forgotten the simple truth that the body is not the actual reason of our existence or for our existence. It is the fruit. And it is the fruit of the corrupt consciousness. And spiritual awakening and spiritual refinement is all about awakening to the dimension of consciousness and trying to understand and see the links between the consciousness and the body. Learn to integrate, learn to let go of the corruption, refine that corruption so that the result of this refinement can be seen on the body itself.
I was thinking that if we are trying to change that world, then we end up crossing that line as well. But if we wish to find truths, discover truths, to make the world a better place, so to speak, the way to do that is not to get involved in this stirring of the pot. You're not embodying that change in that sense. You are actively participating in wanting to change something for the sake of that, and investing in that to the point where you lose yourself. And that is a very dangerous game to play, in my experience.
Well, the whole idea of trying to make this world a better place is kind of, it sprouts out of the ignorance. The root of this is ignorance, because the world is the emanation of our selves, our collective selves. So to make the world better equals to refine ourselves on the collective level. You cannot try to, I mean, you may try, but it's foolish, it's futile. Trying to change the collective. The collective is comprised of individuals. So every individual has a will and a power to witness themselves, to understand their own corruption, and only through their own refinement they can contribute to the collective. And the collective will just but naturally reflect on the condition of the world. So at the moment, the condition of the world is the reflection of our current collective being, and all this vindictiveness, all this conflicts and conflicting nature of people are just but the corruption that has reached the level of it's to the brim. So when something is to the brim, it means that it's just trying, the consciousness itself is trying to purge it out, it's trying to refine it, resolve it. And so we're in the moment of turbulence, turmoil of the world, where the world is just a reflection of ourselves, and we're trying to put it all into some kind of perspective, when the only way we can deal with it, I would say, is to try and deal with our own selves. And the solution is always very, very simple. The solution is surrender to the flow, realize the realization of the natural flow within, which dissolves the outdated paradigms of existence. And it starts from our individual selves. When we realize our false ambitions, when we realize that we sometimes go for things that are not of our nature, of our soul. So this is, again, comes back to the point of understanding your soul, your natural being, rather than living according to certain social, religious paradigms or constraints, family constraints. When you feel like you're compelled to do something which is against your true being, just because you're trying to prove something to someone, just because you're looking for validation. So this realization is already healing in itself, when you're trying to realize what the true flow is. And when I'm in the true flow, my existence is painless. My existence is blissful. I feel supported. I feel like I'm not going against the flow. And many people want to go for against the flow because they say that they look for adventure or for some kind of challenge. But true challenge is to understand the corruption and to let go of that corruption. Because to find challenges is easy, but to let go of the corruption is not. To let go of the falsehood is not. Because the attachment is strong. To let go of certain things, to admit certain corruption or mistakes that we make is much more difficult. But through that process, we may say that we are surrendering into the natural flow. We're discovering our true purpose, and so our life becomes the flow of our true beings, the destiny of the true being, rather than the destiny of the karmic, distorted, corrupt self. So that's the purpose of this process of discovering true spirituality, being a part of the process of dealing with the world through oneself and contributing to the balance of the world, of the existence within oneself first. So if you discover balance, you discover the source of health, the source of longevity, the source of true inspiration, happiness, creativity, abundance, bliss, knowledge. It's so simple. But for the majority, it's difficult because the majority of the people cannot control their emotions. And it's not about actual control, it's about understanding where these emotions originate, how we transmit ourselves in a distorted way, and why. So, because our minds are complex, we cannot understand simplicity. We are scared of simplicity, we repel simplicity and come back to the old complicated paradigms until one day we awaken. Awakening does not mean only to be in bliss, but it means to realize the old, the outdated paradigms and to dissolve them so that they don't have that hold onto our being. They don't have that grip on us. And so most of the people don't get it. They think that if they are experiencing spiritual awakening or prolonged blissful states, that this is the achievement. This is a tool. This is one's natural ability to dissolve the crust. If you're in bliss, but you're pursuing the old paradigms, you're pursuing pain, your choices result in pain, negativity, it means you haven't learned, you haven't realized, you haven't dissolved. Sometimes people do realize their corruption, but they struggle with the dissolution process. They are not able to let go. They are not able to regain trust in the flow. To regain trust means to heal the trauma. The traumatic response is always in lack of trust, because we don't trust in the flow, we don't trust other people. We sabotage our relationships, we disturb our health, we disturb our emotional being, because we can't understand that life is so simple, and we return ourselves to complex paradigms. But if we were wise, we would hold on to the simplicity. We would flow through life through this simplicity, instead of constantly creating ourselves new obstacles, new challenges, new ambitions, new goals. All this is a paradigm of ego. The limited self, the ignorant self that tries to control and live or navigate through some sort of obstacle that it itself creates for itself. The true self flows unobstructedly. It does not need obstacles or challenges or ambitions or goals to validate itself or its own power or its own level of confidence. A true being deals with certain, or probably will deal or will face certain challenges which naturally occur through the communication with other people or other elements in the projected reality. But the attitude, the way the awakened and refined being deals with these things is very different. These things are not viewed as challenges or important things, they do not leave an impression on that awakened and refined consciousness. There is a big difference between awakening different spiritual experiences and the process of refinement and an accomplishment of various levels of refinement. And this accomplishment is, or kind of results in the degree, the level of humility. This degree of humility defines one's access to higher levels of knowledge and understanding of the reality. And that's why I constantly repeat that humility is high intelligence. If you're just intelligent, but you fail to be humble and to flow in life through that, not to flow in life as a lazy, procrastinating being, but as a creative and spontaneous, multifaceted being, then you don't yet, you haven't integrated, you haven't merged with the flow of the reality yet. You are just attempting, you are just trying. And this paradigm of the projected reality keeps on returning you on and on, keeps on captivating you, keeps on distracting you, keeps on creating new ideas of how to entrap your free-flowing natural being again in a new way, in a new paradigm, with a new challenge and a new obstacle and a new pursuit or ambition. So this perception and understanding of life itself becomes a trap. And that's why natural spirituality is so incomprehensible, because it doesn't allow you to hold on to anything. You may experience anything you want, you may enjoy life. But that realization and the depth of that perception makes everything seem to be transitory and unimportant. Important only to that degree that is necessary, practically applicable. So the whole understanding of meaning and purpose of life just dissolves in flow. And at the same time, the purpose is revealed through the flow itself, rather than is forced, rather than is pushed. So in this way, we can understand and see the true spirituality as a flow and a boxed form of spirituality. And you may sometimes use, because a refined being does not mean that it goes into extremes. It allows the flow, even with its boxed or limited elements, to be there. But there is no attachment or purpose for those elements. One just observes them within a limited scope of time and space and lets it go continuously. And through that, there is a free flow of creative being, a free flow of self-expression, an authentic flow of being, an authentic, unobstructed self-expression, which is the biggest challenge for most of the people. Most of the people struggle to be authentic because the crust of individual being, the limited being, is so powerful over them. When in reality, it doesn't have any power. It has power only as long as you empower it from within. When you realize and recognize consciously the power of the flow, the power of the natural being, that realization alone dissolves all the falsehood, all the false crust, no matter how hard the crust may appear to one's limited self. The awareness itself is the most powerful tool for the dissolution of corruption, for self-refinement. So there are different methods of self-refinement and self-purification. But the most powerful is the refinement through the cultivation of one's natural being, through the surrender to the natural flow. And in other words, it's called spontaneous natural absorption, being that which you ultimately are, beyond names and forms, beyond the physical reality. The restoration of the link with one's root, which is the essence of our conscious being. Well, that's the purpose of any awakening and spirituality or spiritual being or life, whatever you call it. That's the essence of existence. And this defines kind of a path. The true spiritual path is that, the path of restoration, the path of coming back through the surrender and humility into the natural flow of existence we call life. And thus this life nurtures our being, especially our physical being too. It ensures longevity, it ensures knowledge, it ensures understanding of the whole paradigm of existence and beyond. So when we pursue or chase limited elements, we fail to grasp the essence and to be a part of this flow. We fail to realize the whole, because our focus is on the fragments of the reality rather than the whole. And this whole doesn't need to be big or wide or expanded. It's the essence within ourselves. We can't name it, we can't box it, we can't touch it, but it's there. It's the very emanation of our existence. That's why no one can truly steal or take someone else's power knowledge, because that's not the knowledge or power of the transitory. That's the knowledge and power of existence itself, of eternity. And so whoever attempts fails. If we don't cultivate the root within ourselves, we keep on gliding along the surface, we keep on chasing mirage, we keep on being victims of our own shadows, of our own projections in this world. Yeah.